This is a loss to the community.
Why did USF sell off its public TV channel on a sliding market for a fraction of its opening bid?
Folks who run universities are very smart, but a lot of times they're not very clever about things.
Tonight, we'll investigate the demise of Tampa Bay's WUSF-TV. Plus, we'll drill into the fight over tax cuts and the gridlock in Congress.
Well, I would have to give us a C-.
Evan Axelbank asked Congressman Dennis Ross to weigh in on the president.
Does the Twitter stuff concern you?
Oh, yes. I'm just glad he doesn't drink.
But we'll start with Steve Bannon's revolt against his fellow Republicans. This is Money, Power, and Politics. The Republican Party has been at war with itself since President Trump took off in the primaries. And the establishment has wavered and clashed with Trump's base ever since. It's been a driving theme of our Republican Civil War mockumentary series. In fact, our resident historian Orville Burnside may have said it best.
The Republicans generally supported Trump's plan, but the Republicans wanted something more, and the Republicans wanted something less.
The president distrusted General Ryan and his elite command from the day they met, and it showed in the heat of battle the year before.
I wouldn't want to be in a foxhole with a lot of these people, that I can tell you.
Yeah, I believe we left off with Chapter 5, when the Republicans defeated the Republicans in the Battle of Trump Care.
Republicans surrendered to themselves on March 24th at Appomattox Courthouse and declared Obamacare the law of the land until it explodes.
Nobody knew that health care could be so complicated.
Our father is wounded, and our dressings are scarce, for all my dressings were lost in the Battle of Nordstrom. Ivanka Trump.
But after they failed to deliver on a 7-year promise, and as they're struggling to get much of anything done in Congress, we now have a full-fledged revolt with the president's former chief strategist vowing to take down fellow Republicans all across the nation.
Corker, McConnell, and Corker and the entire clique, establishment globalist clique on Capitol Hill, have to go.
Well, Trump's base is particularly mad at Bob Corker, the Republican chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, for ripping the president's temperament, calling the White House an adult daycare center, and saying that he feared the president's rhetoric could start World War III.
Senator Corker is an absolute disgrace.
But Steve Bannon made it clear he's declaring war on many other Republicans in the Senate as well.
Nobody's safe. We're coming after all of them, and we're going to win. There's a coalition coming together that's going to challenge every Republican incumbent except for Ted Cruz.
Yeah, that's the only exception. They're giving Ted Cruz a pass, either for getting or forgiving all the mean things he said about Trump in the primaries.
I tell you what I really think of Donald Trump. This man is a pathological liar. Listen, Donald Trump is a serial philanderer, describes his battles with venereal disease as his own personal Vietnam, of a braggadocious, arrogant buffoon.
Ted Cruz is a good man.
But more than a dozen other Republicans in the Senate are now facing a rebellion from within, and nobody knows how this one will play out. Who will win the battle? The establishment Republicans or the Bannon Brigade?
We're going after these guys tooth and nail.
So for the next few weeks, we'll ask different Republican lawmakers where they line up, what they think of some of the president's recent decisions, and what they think of Congress. We'll start tonight with Congressman Dennis Ross, who sat down with Evan Axelbank.
Congressman Ross, thanks so much for being with us.
You bet, Evan.
Appreciate this. Let me ask you this. Did you agree with the pardon of Sheriff Arpaio?
You know, that is the prerogative of this president, as it has been in every preceding president, to pardon whomever they want. Usually it's done in the 11th hour of their last term. I can understand why he did it, because Arpaio has been a very strong supporter of this president. I look back and, you know.
But is that the right way? Is that the right reason to?
Look at Chelsea Manning. Look at what they did. This previous president commuted his sentence. I mean, this is a guy that went out and sold secrets, gave away our secrets, our top secrets. I mean, people were killed as a result of this. I mean, this is a political hot potato that's going to go back, whether it's Arpaio, whether it's Chelsea Manning or whomever. Look, it's the president's prerogative. Let them do what they want to do. Nixon was pardoned by Carter. By Ford. It probably cost Ford his presidency. These things happen. I'm sure there's going to be political repercussions for President Trump, one way or the other.
Will they come from you?
No, they won't.
Why not?
I respect
just because he's a member of your party?
No, I respect the power of the president to do that. I can complain about it. I can support it. It doesn't matter. It's not going to change it.
An email showed President Trump was trying to build the building in Russia during the campaign. Is that appropriate?
You know, this whole Russian thing, I'm not so sure where we are with it because nobody's been able to find
that's where we are.
Well, but that again, and what's the source of that?
Well, it's a Washington Post article.
It's a Washington Post article.
So nothing they write could
be
true.
I wouldn't say that, but you have to put everything into question, no matter, consider its source. And that's all I'm saying. You know, show me the smoking guns and then we can start, you know, taking some of this pretty seriously.
If Robert Mueller comes forward and says there was collusion between President Trump and Russia, would you vote to impeach him?
I, again, have to see the facts. The conclusionary statement has to be supported by evidence, and I have to see the evidence to support such a statement.
Is it appropriate for a sitting president to be making money on hotels and other ventures that he takes part in?
I don't believe there's anything unethical about it, that there are no rules about it for the president. For those of us in Congress, the only thing we can have is a passive income.
There's nothing unethical about, I want to just be clear here. The president owns a hotel. People from foreign governments swipe their credit card to stay there. There's nothing unethical about that?
Would they do that just because it's the president, or they do it? Who knows? You know, he has handled his matters and to put him in a blind trust. He is doing, I believe, what is necessary to distance himself from his business transactions.
You believe he's done that?
I believe he's done that, and I believe that he said he was going to do that and that he's going to follow through on that. Again, those will be repercussions that he'll have to face if he doesn't do it.
Can you grade Congress?
Well, I would have to give us a C-.
C-?
Yeah.
That's low.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more I'd like to see us do. I'm very frustrated with this, Evan. I got to tell you, I didn't run to just sit out there and say no. No may be a good short-term policy, but at some point, the people that elect you are going to expect you to get things done. And that doesn't mean that you have a monopoly on good ideas. It means you reach across the aisle and you try to get things done.
Would you leave Congress if you find you can't get things done voluntarily?
Let me put it this way. I will not be a career member of Congress.
A grade for the president? You're a congressman. You have oversight of the executive branch.
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. A grade for the president. You know, an overall grade, or do you want to do it in terms of citizenship?
Well, let's do citizenship. Let's do citizenship.
I would give him a C on citizenship. I would like to see him be more statesmanlike. I would like to see him be more presidential. But in terms of his ability to turn this economy around, in terms of his ability to rally people together behind this country, I would have to give him at least a B.
Does the Twitter stuff concern you?
Oh, yes. I'm just glad he doesn't drink.
Are you confident in his ability to handle a nuclear threat from North Korea?
Absolutely.
You are?
Absolutely.
What has he shown to give you that confidence?
Rex Tillerson, Mad Dog Mattis, Mike Pence, people with whom he has surrounded himself that I have a great deal of confidence in.
But not him.
Well, that's a good leader relies on the experts with whom he surrounds himself. And so that's why I have confidence in this president within regard to any nuclear threat.
Okay, thank you, Evan and Congressman Ross. Now it's time for Adam Goodman, Republican strategist and Edward R. Murrow Fellow at Tufts University. Thank you once again for joining us.
Always great to be here.
Let's start with Corker's comment saying that the president's comments could trigger World War III. I've heard a lot of Republicans say he should not be saying that, but I haven't heard any saying that Corker was wrong. Just that he shouldn't say it.
Well, first of all, Craig, there's no filter on what anyone's saying right now across all fences, and Senator Corker is no exception. What is happening, though, if you want to put it all in a nutshell, you have Senator Corker who's waging war on Donald Trump. You have Donald Trump who's waging war on the system. You have Steve Bannon, who's now inserted himself into the process, who's waging war on the Republican Party. And you have Americans who are trying to figure this all out, feeling they almost feel at war with themselves, as everyone seems to be at war with each other.
And is Corker correct or incorrect in stating that the president's rhetoric could be escalating us toward war? And if he is correct, then should he not be saying it and saying it as much as he can?
Well, we're in virgin territory, to say the least, with President Trump. One thing about North Korea we do know. We have, I call him the soulless, punk from Pyongyang. I mean, we have a leader over there who is probably certifiable. And there's no telling whether what Donald Trump is doing is going to exacerbate or do anything to try to take care of a situation, frankly, Craig, we've been trying to deal with over the last couple of administrations and not with any success.
And the president, of course, continues to be irked, to say the least, with a lot of the national news coverage he is seeing, particularly over Rex Tillerson, reportedly calling him a moron, saying that there should be hearings on Capitol Hill into fake news.
Well, there are going to be hearings on Capitol Hill. I'm not sure it's going to be over fake news. It's probably going to be over the President of the United States and others in his administration, as the Justice Department obviously has its sights trained squarely on them.
And if there were hearings on fake news, if you're getting into whether or not Rex Tillerson called the president a moron, that wouldn't go so well for the president, would it?
No.
Democrats would have a field day over it.
You would think what we should be talking about are the things that really matter in life, and not, you might say, locker room, verbal volleys that may or may not have happened, but have no consequence, frankly, in what we need to do to pull this country together.
That's a big part of what's happening here. It's a big distraction to the president's agenda. To what extent is that weighing things down? And if he were able and other Republicans able to move beyond it, they would be able to find common ground and get stuff like tax reform done.
The American people have made it very clear. And when they start voting that way, they'll make it even clearer. They want things that work and things that happen in Washington. It's not happening. Congress is still at an all-time low in terms of approval ratings. Ryan, Schumer, Pelosi, McConnell, all at terrible personal political ratings. The reason is we are getting to the choke point in this country with all the challenges we face and the paralysis we continue to see out of Washington, where we've had enough.
You know how I like to pin you and everybody else down on specific predictions so we can play them back later. How many establishment Republicans then do you think will fall come November of next year?
Are we talking Senate, House?
Senate.
Okay. I think the Senate's going to fall into a virtual tie. I think Republicans are going to lose ground despite having all the advantages going in terms of number of incumbents up versus Democrats. The House is going to get much closer, but it will be retained by Republicans because of that wonderful word called redistricting, which is keeping them in power, at least a while longer.
Adam Goodman, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And coming up, fans of public TV took a big loss this weekend. The University of South Florida sold and canceled WUSF-TV. Critics claim that deal violates USF's own policy and did not pay off as they had hoped. Bad news for fans of public television. The University of South Florida sold WUSF-TV, and we dug into that decision and the deal here in tonight's We the People.
This is PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service.
The answer just begins with public television.
LBJ gave us public TV to spread non-commercial educational shows across the nation. And the University of South Florida got a broadcast license to serve the people of Tampa Bay. It agreed to serve the public and not itself, until now.
Well, I couldn't believe it.
USF sold its broadcast space to the FCC at auction for the phone industry, which will use what we've known as Channel 16 to transmit smartphone transmissions instead of public television, which means the end of Tampa Bay's WUSF-TV and a blow to its viewers like Bruce Downing.
Violating their own policy statement of saying that the university holds this license in public trust for the benefit of the public and not for the benefit of the university. So what do? They turn around and sell the license.
Well, the university owned the license. It was free to sell its broadcast rights, even if it did contradict its own policy. But what really gets fans of public TV is what USF got for selling in the 11th largest TV market in the nation.
Folks who run universities are very smart, but a lot of times they're not very clever about things.
USF's asking price, nearly $350 million. Actual selling price, $18.8 million.
It was really just like a real estate bubble that collapsed.
Nobody's going to have the height we have.
Remember that time when Donald Trump pitched Trump Tower Tampa and his TV apprentice told us to jump into real estate and buy?
So I'm very confident that Florida and Tampa particularly are posed for great success in real estate for the next few years.
Then 6 months later, the market tanked and buyers got burned. Well, media and telecom watchdog Harold Feld said the same sort of thing happened to USF at the Broadcast Spectrum auction.
And people started talking about ridiculous amounts of money, $80 billion, $100 billion for these stations. And there just wasn't that much money in the wireless industry.
The channel in Santa Rosa, California, priced at $265 million, sold for $72 million. A Vermont channel priced at $166 million, sold for $56 million. USF was free to bail out of the auction as the prices crashed, but it didn't.
You know, there's a tendency once you're in for the consultants and everything to say, no, sell, just, go ahead and sell.
It's not the first time USF started out with rosy numbers that did not pan out, like the time they bragged about marketing Obamacare enrollment to Florida residents.
So we were able to reach more than 37 million individuals in the state through that effort.
Oh, wait, there's only 19 million people in Florida.
Right, but you know, our media sometimes crosses.
Back then, they got rosy numbers by counting the same people over and over again. How do you get to 37 million if there's only 19 million people in Florida?
Well, the media outreach we did they weren't simultaneous. It wasn't one time. And so, you know, you were reaching some of those individuals multiple times.
So, once again, we wanted to ask USF about its numbers and its reasons for ending what it called a never-ending mission in its own programming.
Nurturing, enriching, and supporting our community through educational programs and media is our never-ending mission.
We started with the GM of Channel 16, who passed us to USF spokeswoman who declined our request. And when we asked to speak to President Judy Ginshaft about this, another spokesman said they're not making anyone available for interviews.
WUSF was now at the turn of the century, and its greatest transformation was yet to come.
In other words, the university went dark about WUSF-TV going dark.
I just can't imagine that they would take this action the way they have.
Tampa Bay does have another PBS station, WEDU, that's not run by USF, but Bruce Downing and others say that cannot replace the original shows that made WUSF-TV unique.
In essence, the Tampa Bay market is losing half of its non-commercial programming, and I think that's a shame.
He said it's hard to explain the loss, so as he struggled to find an analogy, we may have found one right in front of his face.
This is a tea set?
Yes, it came from England.
Came from England?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what this means to you, you can't replace this?
No, it's, in that sense, it's irreplaceable.
I'll give you $18 for it.
Yeah, and that's a very good analogy. This is a loss to the community.
Well, a spokeswoman for WEDU said her station is picking up nearly all of WUSF's programming that it did not already carry on its channel. And a USF spokesman sent us a statement noting that it considered this decision very seriously and that this is just aligning resources to fit its mission as a research university. As we also noted, USF has played a big role in promoting Obamacare. And on that note, President Trump is making some very big changes that could shake up the Obamacare market. On one hand, his order gives more people access to conceivably cheaper health insurance. On the flip side, it could leave patients in more of a lurch when they get very sick. Meanwhile, Florida is not getting nearly as much money as Governor Scott expected to help treat sick kids in our state. So we're investigating that, and we'll bring you an in-depth look into Florida's health crisis on our program next week. Meanwhile, coming up, we're going to drill into the firestorm over football players kneeling to the national anthem. President Trump is now using it to raise campaign money. We'll show you where this is leading with some irony for both sides. Last weekend, Vice President Pence walked out of a football game because some players took a knee during the anthem. And after all of the money and security to fly the vice president there, evidence showed he had planned to leave early all along. And now this week, the president is using it to raise money. Here's the email he sent me. Craig, I was so proud of the vice president, but immediately after the vice president's honorable display of leadership and patriotism, the fake news media relentlessly attacked him. The media is not going to win this fight because we have the American people standing on our side. Please make a contribution of at least $5 to show your support. And so now both sides are accusing each other of pulling stunts. And there are two ways in the big picture of looking at this controversy. Last year, for example, when Colin Kaepernick started the anthem protest, John Wilson summed it up pretty well for both sides.
Do we accept the principle that democracy means you can protest anything? You can burn the flag. He had the right to do that. Every NFL player who wants to go down on a knee has the right to do that. But a lot of people have died to give them that right to do that. If this is taken as disrespectful of those who've given their life in service to America, there's a huge issue here. But on the other hand, protest is who we are.
Now, ironically, one side wants to silence the players for protesting a flag that represents the right to peacefully protest whatever they want. And ironically, those players are protesting racial injustice against a flag that represents the fight against racial injustice for more than 150 years. While our nation was founded in slavery and racism, it later fought wars to end it in our country, then fought racism and fascism all around the world. And when the Klan and racist mobs took off in the South, the flag represented the federal government that cracked down on police brutality and brought bigots to justice and opened school doors. And it makes a continuing commitment to civil rights and social justice in this country and all over the world, with so many who fought and died for the cause of freedom. So the NFL players will never win over some of their fans until or unless they redirect or more specifically explain what they're protesting. And the critics will never have their ear if they try to dismiss their right to protest. Coming up, where we go from here and which tax breaks the NFL owners could lose under a new plan in Congress. Well, the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said the players should stand during the anthem and could be directed to do so under league rules. But if they don't, this will not go away, and the NFL could lose its tax-exempt status. Voluntarily gave it up a couple of years ago. Congress has a plan to make that permanent, and there will be pressure on state and local governments to not subsidize any future stadium deals. Folks, that is our show tonight. Much more on our YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. We will see you again for another round of Money, Power, and Politics next week.